Sometimes it takes a child to remind a person of something they forgot while growing up, and that is how my story began. While navigating the infinity of the sky, one day in the middle of the desert, amidst the solitude, I heard a small voice. A voice coming from afar, soft but determined. "Please, draw me a sheep?" At first glance, it seemed like an ordinary request, but at that moment, a very old, very familiar door opened in my heart. Perhaps it was the door to my childhood, perhaps to curiosity, or perhaps to things I had lost long ago. Blinking in the desert sun, I looked at the child standing before me. He had hair shining with golden light. It was as if the wind wasn't guiding his hair, but rather he was guiding the wind. His gaze was clear, calm, but at the same time it carried the weariness of a long journey. "Who are you?" I asked. He smiled, and right then his story began to unfold before me like dust falling from the stars. First, the little prince described his own small planet, B-612, a world no bigger than the palm of a hand, 3 tiny volcanoes, sometimes dormant, sometimes angry, and of course, a single and very special rose, sensitive, delicate, and capricious, but just as beautiful. The prince's voice changed when he spoke of his rose. It was as if his words softened, his breath trembled. "My rose was very fragile," he said, "and I was too late to understand her." This confession stretched out like an echo in the middle of the desert. These words falling from the lips of a small child were heavier than a regret adults keep hidden for years. Then the little prince explained why he left his planet, partly out of curiosity and partly because of that silent call of the heart that sometimes drives one far away. On the first planet he visited, there was a king ruling over a world where no one else existed. While he comically demanded everyone bow to him, there was actually no one to rule. Then he visited a conceited man, a man who expected praise, demanded applause, but listened only to his own voice in a world where no one heard him. On another planet sat a serious businessman enslaved by numbers, counting the stars, writing down what he thought he owned in a notebook, but he could touch none of them and loved none of them. In the geographer's planet, there were massive books, but he had never traveled. He only writes, records, but goes nowhere. All these people the little prince described were actually showing the adult world through a strange mirror. Perhaps as we grew up, we learned to calculate, not to understand, to possess, not to ask, to rush past, not to look. Then the prince told me the story that made him feel he had changed the most, his meeting with the fox. The fox had shown him what the word to tame meant, that what makes someone special is the time you spend on them, that you must see with your heart, not with your eyes. The fox's words seemed to land not on the desert sands, but inside me, because sometimes a person spends their whole life having forgotten the heart's ability to see. The prince turned to me and spoke slowly. "You become responsible forever for what you have tamed. I am responsible for my rose." There was such deep loyalty in this sentence. I remembered something I had forgotten for a long time. Value was hidden not in intensity, but in devotion. We spent days together in the desert, watching the patterns the wind drew on the sand, the silence of the night sky, listening to the tales the stars told one another. But time moves forward for everyone. Even the stars continue their cycles. One day, the little prince looked at me silently. There was both determination and a slight sadness in his eyes. "I must return," he said. "My rose is waiting for me." Hearing these words, I felt a collapse inside me, as if I wasn't someone who had been alone in the desert for years, but someone who would only come to know loneliness once he was gone. But sometimes one loves their loved ones not by holding on to them, but by accepting their journeys. In the depth of the night, at that moment when the stars shone with golden dust, the little prince slowly walked away. Watching him leave, every step he took left a memory behind. The desert was silent, the wind was gentle, and the solitude I was in suddenly changed its meaning, because I realized at that moment Some journeys do not take you to a place, they open up your soul. The little prince is gone, but he left me something. A child's curiosity, the simplicity of a friendship, the fragility of a rose, and everything I had forgotten to see with my heart. Now, sometimes I look at the sky. If one star shines a little brighter than the others, I smile. Perhaps a small child with golden hair is watching me from somewhere. Perhaps he has reunited with his rose. Perhaps the fox is still whispering the secrets he taught him in the wind. And perhaps, in the light of that tiny star, I still hear the warmth of the first question he asked. Please, draw me a sheep? Because sometimes a child's question can heal all the loneliness of an adult. And sometimes a star, a rose, a friend can speak louder than all the noise of the world. That is why, whenever I remember the little prince, I whisper to myself, what is essential is invisible to the eye. And that invisible thing connects us to life, brings us closer to each other, and takes us back to our childhood.